and welcome to my workshop known as the Wood Nest. I've been making these videos for many years where we invite various artists to come in and present their music and play some of their guitars. I'm doing something a little bit different today. I would like to discuss the journey I've been on in birthing my new Model C1 concert classical guitar, and with me today is an old friend and client, one of my artists, Philippe Mariotti. Philippe is a protege of the great Alexander Lagoya. He taught at the Paris Conservatory for more than 20 years. For the last 5 years, he's been teaching at the Conservatory in Nice. And I'd like to welcome him to the workshop, and he will be playing some music for us later on as well. But my first question to Philippe today is, what is the concert classical guitarist looking for in an instrument today?
Well, I think there is two categories, and the first one is the people looking for something which is kind of the mystic, and they are looking for all glory of the guitars from the 60s, 70s or 80s, like 1965 Fleda or 1985 or whatever, Friedrich, for example. Mm-hmm. And the other category of players, they are looking more for new generation of guitars, more modern sound, powerful guitars, and if possible, easy to play. And it makes me think about the first guitar you made me, mm-hmm. and was also a modern guitar. And and today I discovered this new guitar, mm-hmm. which is very different, mm-hmm. in a certain kind of way, from new features. This guitar is beautiful, the sound is sweet, powerful, it has a lot of energy to it, and a lot of overtones, and sustained forever, almost, for nylon string guitar. And I was wondering, where did you get your inspiration to build this new guitar?
Whenever I have developed a new model, I've always started by looking at the past. I go to a lot of museums, examine a lot of musical instrument collections. I've always been a student of the guitars that came before me and before us. My first C1 was no different, and I looked at the great guitars of the past. And in speaking to some of my concert players, it became more and more evident that the need to move more into the 21st century with my work was evident. And I had the opportunity to travel to Paris to examine a collection of really fine modern concert guitars. I spent a few days there and was able to take a lot of measurements, and I was able to listen critically to the instruments and compare them serial number to serial number. So I learned a lot that day. And then since coming back as well, I've been doing a lot of reading about some of the modern guitars. There are a lot of modern concert guitars that have lattice bracing, which this is, but this is very different than those guitars. A lot of the modern guitars have a balsa and carbon composite lattice. And in speaking to some of my clients, while those instruments are very popular, a lot of the modern players can hear the carbon and they find it displeasing. It's not something that they really like. So part of the challenge was, how do you approach that modern sound but stay away from the carbon and some of those other interesting modern materials that have been put into the instruments? So that led me to a series of new features. I changed the geometry of my guitar. I changed the thickness of the soundboard. I changed my bracing. I pretty much changed almost everything on the guitar except for the shape. Yeah, and it's a heavy guitar now, which we will talk about in a minute. One of the things that a lot of players told me they really like, there are a couple of makers who are making instruments with adjustable necks. And I spent quite a bit of time talking with some of my colleagues about possibilities of different systems for making adjustable necks. One of the things that I'm very particular about is playability and intonation. So I looked at different adjustment systems. How would that affect, if it does, the intonation of the guitar while you make any adjustments? I came up with this system of an adjustable neck, which is inspired by the work of Greg Smallman. And I think it's an interesting and successful feature, but more important is I want to know, as a player, what are the advantages that you find to having a neck that can be adjusted like this one?
Well, Michael, I've always been thinking that this feature was very important because it was just this that it made. Putting this here, and then the neck goes up and down. And I mean, every players have a different kind of strength. They don't play all with the same intensity. Some who dig in strong in the strings, and some other are very soft. And so I think that it's a very cool feature, because if you change strings, if you put some high tension strings, can get higher, and if you put normal strings or nylon strings, the different gauge of the string, so you can adjust the height of the string. And if you, for example, for someone who is practicing at home for a lot of hours, hard pieces, you can lower the strings and just, play easy touch, so you're not tight at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And if you play concert, or if you play, for example, with a violin player, it will play strong, so you need maybe to get higher with high tension strings, so you can have maximum power, and depending on the mood of the day, maybe. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a crazy work. It's amazing. It works very good. And I've noticed that there's an arched back that you've made.
A lot of the modern guitars that I examined, the lattice braced guitars, the double top guitars, even some conventionally braced guitars, there seems to be a movement to an arched back. And there are a lot of engineering principles about why an arch is good and why acoustically maybe it works. There are a lot of ways of looking at guitars. My personal outlook on the guitar has always been that the guitar is a drum, and there's a lot of ways of making a drum. And some drums have one membrane on them, and some drums have two membranes on them. Sometimes you have a timpani, which is a drum with one membrane and a big bowl on it. So then the question was how to address the back and what materials to use. You can carve a back, like on a cello or an archtop guitar. Some manufacturers have taken wood, and with heat and steam they've bent it and pressed it into a back. A lot of the modern makers have also been doing composite backs, where they take various layers of wood and veneers, sometimes some modern materials, and they've put them together in a sandwich to create this back. I experimented probably with about 20 different, well, not probably, with about 20 different combinations of various materials and various configurations and various grain orientations, different kind of adhesives, different sized arches, to come up with this particular combination, which uses a series of some modern space-age material, but various layers of wood, which are held together in an epoxy resin, and with probably about 20 tons of force pressed into this shape. Whoa. And I feel it gives the guitar a tremendous amount of projection. It makes for a powerful instrument. Some backs can be diffusers and very compliant. Other backs are projectors, and that's what this is. This is really for the modern concert player who wants that listener at the back of the concert hall in the least expensive seat to have the best experience possible. I also find harmonically it contributes a lot to the voice of the instrument that I found, to be honest, much more pleasing than I thought it should be. Because when you start thinking about composite materials, you think, oh, that can't sound very good, but I think it's a better way of making a guitar.
For sure.
And another one of the features that I put on this guitar was this particular armrest in the style of a lot of the modern makers. I've been putting other armrests on my guitars for, well, over 20 years now, but they're made in a very different style. So I know what players appreciate about the old style of armrest. I'm curious, as a player, what you feel the advantages of this style of armrest are.
Well, the armrest on this guitar is wonderful, it's beautiful. Well, in fact, the armrest is the new feature for all modern guitars that I've seen, and usually they say it's to prevent to damping the top, so the top is free to move. And but most of all, I think as a player, it's really more comfortable because this is smooth. And this one is very round and very smooth too. So you don't feel it at all. And without the armrest, your arm is always cutted. And so it's very painful sometimes. And this is just perfect. It's the most comfortable thing. Mm-hmm. And comfort, I think, helps you to be better or to be more musical after that. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And the cool feature I've noticed is that the finish on your guitar is usually on the necks is always gets sticky a lot. And this one is very, very smooth. But I've noticed also that the top is very different. The finish is not glossy as usual. And I would like you to tell me a little bit about this.
The back sides and neck of this guitar are finished like all of my guitars are. I use a UV cured finish, and it's very, it's very thin. Even though it looks very deep, I have an instrument that I measure them with, so it's really about 0.1 millimeters, maybe 0.15 millimeters, not even thick or thin. And it's a very robust finish. It doesn't scratch, and because of that, it doesn't get soft with heat, and that's why it feels good under your hand while you're performing. The top, on the other hand, is a different story. The combination of the two requires many weeks to finish a guitar. It's really complicated, but everybody has been after some kind of a coating that allows the soundboard to vibrate in as natural a manner as possible without suffocating, choking, and damping the top. Centuries ago, the violin makers were using turpine varnishes on their instruments, and it usually started off with some kind of a protein ground. They would use hide glue, animal glue to seal the wood, or they would use egg whites to seal the wood. I have a more modern coating that I put on as a first layer to seal the wood. This is a modern polymer, and I'm applying it in the same way that it would have been with the old turpine varnishes that they used. So there's actually almost no finish on the guitar, probably 0.01 or 0.02 millimeters total thickness. So much less than French polish, much less than an oil varnish finish. It's very delicate, and I have protectors on the top, but I think the voice is worth it.
Yeah, it looks like very silky on the top.
It is. I like it a lot. The high gloss finish is very beautiful to look at, but this has a very natural kind of a glow to it that I appreciate very much.
When it's glossy on stage, when you move the guitar, sometimes the people's, yeah.
Yes.
And with this kind of finish, I think it's kind of cool because you can see only the wood. When you turn the guitar down, there's no reflections.
For those who are lucky enough, like you, to play on large stages. Yes. All in all, it's been a really fun journey creating this new model, and the journey never ends. Your visit here these past few days, I've learned a lot. My head is full of ideas. I've got several more of these on order, and I'm making more of them. I have little tweaks and adjustments I'm going to make over the next few years, so it'll continue to improve. But for now, for sure, thank you.
Well, it was my pleasure. I want to thank you because this is the first time that I can see a guitar that has just been made like a birth, and it's just like a baby, and I've seen it just start to cry, almost try to sing, and it was a really, really good experience for me to see this.
Actually, that's very interesting because this guitar, for those of you watching don't know, this guitar was strung up 50 hours ago. So like a little bit more than 2 days ago, and everybody, we hear about guitars opening up and they need time. Very few people have the opportunity to actually experience what happens to an instrument over those first few days, and Philippe literally took the guitar 24 hours, less than 24 hours after I put strings on it for the first time, and started playing the instrument. And over the first 6 hours,
the guitar changed every seconds, every minutes, every hours. It was amazing.
Yeah, and it's still changing.
Yeah.
All in all, this has been a really fascinating project for me and very exciting. As with all new models, it will continue to evolve over the next years, and I've learned a tremendous amount about the instrument and about addressing the player's needs through this, through you, through some of your other friends playing on the concert stages. So thank you for that.
Well, it was my pleasure, and I thank you to let me discover this guitar. Well, and when I came in, this was just a baby, just turned up, and I played the first note on this guitar, and it was very emotional. And we've seen this guitar in 24 hours becoming a guitar from pieces of wood that you've been artfully built together, and it's amazing to see the birth of the guitar. And I hope that the people will enjoy what we've done today with the music that we recorded, and I hope that we'll love the sound of this new instrument, which is gorgeous.
Thank you for